Think your garden requires constant replanting every spring? Vikings were growing food over 1,000 years ago that came back year after year without a single seed packet or garden center trip. Today, you're going to discover 10 Viking perennial crops that you plant once and harvest forever. Get ready to discover why Vikings weren't just fierce raiders. They were agricultural geniuses whose forgotten crops could revolutionize your garden if you're brave enough to bring them back. Lovage, Levisticum officinale, the Norse celery that never dies. Long before grocery stores sold celery wrapped in plastic, Vikings had lovage, a towering perennial herb that provided that essential savory flavor without any of the fussing modern celery demands. This wasn't some delicate garden princess. Lovage was the workhorse of Norse kitchens, growing in every farmstead, from Iceland to the British Isles. What made lovage extraordinary was its sheer usefulness. The entire plant screams practicality in a way that would make any Viking nod with approval. Young leaves taste remarkably like celery, with a hint of parsley, perfect for tossing into the bubbling cauldrons of soup that sustained families through long winters. The hollow stems could be candied or used as drinking straws for mead. The roots, dug up in autumn, were sliced and dried for winter seasoning. Even the seeds packed a punch, used like celery seed, but with more intensity. Modern nutritional analysis reveals why Norse cooks treasured lovage so highly. The leaves contain high levels of vitamin C, essential for preventing scurvy during months when fresh food was scarce. They also pack quercetin, a powerful antioxidant that modern science has linked to reduced inflammation. Vikings didn't understand the chemistry, but they recognized that families who ate lovage regularly seemed healthier during the lean months. The growing part is almost embarrassingly simple. Plant lovage once in rich, moist soil with full sun to partial shade, and it'll tower over your garden for decades. We're talking 6 feet, 1.8 meters, tall or more, with thick stems and glossy leaves that look impressive even when you're not harvesting. The deep taproot punches down through compacted soil, making it drought-tolerant once established. For today's gardeners, lovage offers something grocery stores can't match: fresh celery flavor available year-round without the waste. No more watching expensive celery stalks turn to mush in the refrigerator. Just step outside and snip what you need. The leaves work beautifully in everything, from roasted chicken to hearty stews, and you can dry them for winter use when the plant dies back. But lovage was just the beginning of Viking garden wisdom. While it provided savory depth, another plant offered something even more critical for Norse survival: Sorrel rumex acetosa, the vitamin C powerhouse that saved lives. Long before lemons reached northern Europe, Vikings had sorrel, a tangy perennial green that provided the vitamin C essential for preventing scurvy during months-long sea voyages and brutal winters. This hardy plant grew wild in meadows across Scandinavia, but smart Norse farmers cultivated it in their kitchen gardens, ensuring a reliable supply of this life-saving green. What made sorrel truly special was its incredible timing. While other plants were still sleeping underground in early spring, sorrel pushed up fresh green leaves through the last patches of snow. For Viking families who had survived on preserved foods through dark winter months, these tart leaves were like nature's wake-up call. The sharp, lemony taste comes from oxalic acid, the same compound that gives rhubarb its pucker-inducing bite. Modern science has confirmed what Vikings knew intuitively. Sorrel contains more vitamin C per serving than oranges, along with significant amounts of vitamin A, iron, and potassium. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows sorrel seeds in cooking areas, proving this wasn't just foraged food, it was deliberately grown and valued. The beauty of sorrel lies in how aggressively it wants to grow. Plant it once in average soil with decent drainage, and it'll spread into thick clumps that produce tender leaves from early spring through late fall. It tolerates partial shade, making it perfect for those tricky spots under fruit trees where other vegetables struggle. The plant reaches about 2 feet, 61 centimeters, tall, with arrow-shaped leaves that are unmistakable once you know what to look for. For today's homesteaders and gardeners, sorrel offers something remarkable: fresh salad greens available when your garden is otherwise barren. The young leaves work beautifully raw in salads, providing that bright, acidic note that wakes up your taste buds. Older leaves become more intense and are better suited for cooking. Vikings would simmer them into soups or use them to cut through rich, fatty fish dishes. Harvest by snipping outer leaves regularly, which encourages the plant to produce tender new growth. The leaves bruise easily, so handle them gently. Some gardeners remove the flower stalks to keep the plant focused on leaf production, though the flowers themselves are edible and add visual interest. While sorrel provided essential nutrition, Vikings also cultivated another allium that packed even more powerful flavor and medicinal properties: Ramsons, wild garlic, Allium ursinum, the warrior's secret weapon. In the dense forests of Scandinavia, Vikings discovered a plant so powerful they believed it could ward off evil spirits and strengthen warriors before battle. Ramsons, also called wild garlic or bear's garlic, carpeted the forest floor each spring with broad green leaves and white star-shaped flowers. The entire plant, leaves, flowers, bulbs, delivered an intense garlic punch that made cultivated garlic seem timid by comparison. What made Ramsons extraordinary wasn't just the flavor. Vikings observed that warriors who ate Ramsons regularly seemed to recover faster from wounds and resist infections that killed others. Modern research has confirmed their intuition. Ramsons contains allicin, the same antimicrobial compound found in garlic but in higher concentrations. It also packs more vitamin C than cultivated garlic, along with minerals like iron, magnesium, and manganese. The Norse relationship with Ramsons went beyond simple cooking. They used it as a spring tonic, believing it purified the blood after long winters of preserved foods. Bundles of Ramsons were hung in doorways to ward off disease. The bulbs were crushed and applied to wounds as a natural antibiotic. Whether these practices worked through chemistry or belief doesn't matter. Vikings who used Ramsons had better survival outcomes. Growing Ramsons requires understanding its preferences. This woodland plant thrives in partial to full shade, with moist, rich soil, conditions that mirror its natural forest habitat. Plant bulbs in autumn about 4 inches, 10 centimeters deep, and by spring you'll have carpets of broad leaves emerging. Once established, Ramsons spreads enthusiastically through both seeds and bulb division, creating ever-expanding patches. For modern foragers and gardeners, Ramsons offers something special: the first fresh allium flavor of spring, available weeks before chives or cultivated garlic are ready. Harvest leaves before the plant flowers for the mildest flavor. The white flowers are edible too, making beautiful garnishes with a delicate garlic taste. Even the bulbs can be dug and used like small garlic cloves, though most gardeners leave them to multiply. The leaves work brilliantly in everything from pesto to soups. Vikings would chop them finely and mix them with butter or soft cheese, creating spreads that added flavor to bland bread. They'd also layer whole leaves with fish before baking, infusing the meat with that distinctive garlicky aroma. But while Ramsons thrived in shady forests, Vikings also cultivated plants along their extensive coastlines, where another perennial powerhouse grew in the harsh conditions between land and sea. Sea kale maritima, the coastal survivor. Along the rocky shores of Scandinavia and the British Isles, Vikings discovered a plant that seemed designed for survival in impossible conditions. Sea kale grew where salt spray killed other vegetables, where sandy soil offered almost no nutrition, and where winter storms battered everything in sight. Yet this silvery blue perennial not only survived, it thrived, producing tender shoots and leaves that became prized in Norse coastal communities. What made sea kale special was its incredible versatility. In early spring, Vikings would pile sand or seaweed over the emerging shoots, blanching them to create tender white stems that tasted like a cross between asparagus and cabbage. These blanched shoots were considered a delicacy, reserved for important feasts and celebrations. Later in the season, the blue-green leaves could be cooked like cabbage, and the flower buds worked similarly to broccoli. Modern nutritional analysis shows why coastal Vikings valued sea kale so highly. The leaves contain high levels of vitamin C, vitamin K, and minerals like calcium and magnesium, nutrients that were harder to obtain in coastal diets heavy on fish and preserved meats. The plant also contains glucosinolates, compounds that modern research links to cancer prevention and immune system support. The chemistry behind sea kale's salt tolerance is fascinating. The plant has evolved specialized cells that sequester salt away from vital tissues, allowing it to grow in conditions that would kill most vegetables. This same mechanism makes it incredibly drought-tolerant once established, since it's adapted to survive with minimal fresh water. For today's gardeners, especially those dealing with coastal conditions or sandy soil, sea kale offers something remarkable: a productive perennial that actually prefers the conditions other vegetables hate. Plant crowns or root cuttings in spring, giving them deep, well-drained soil and full sun. The plant develops a massive taproot that can extend 6 feet, 1.8 meters, down, anchoring it against storms and accessing water other plants can't reach. The first year focuses on establishment, but by the second spring, you can begin harvesting. Pile sand, straw, or upturned pots over emerging shoots in early spring to blanch them. After 3 to 4 weeks, uncover and cut the tender white shoots at ground level. The plant will continue producing leaves throughout the season. Vikings understood that different environments required different crops. While sea kale dominated coastal gardens, inland farms relied on another versatile perennial that provided not one, but 3 different vegetables from a single plant. Good King Henry, Blatum bonus henricus. 3 vegetables in one. Vikings called it English mercury, or simply the good plant, and for good reason. Good King Henry delivered 3 completely different vegetables from one root system, making it possibly the most efficient crop in any Norse garden. This wasn't just clever, it was essential for families trying to maximize production from small garden plots during short growing seasons. What made Good King Henry extraordinary was its sequential harvest strategy. First, in early spring, when food stores were running desperately low, thick shoots emerged from the ground, acting exactly like asparagus spears. Vikings would snap these off and cook them immediately, enjoying that first taste of fresh food after months of preserved provisions. The shoots appeared weeks before actual asparagus, filling what Norse farmers called the hunger gap. But the plant didn't stop there. As the season progressed, those same plants produced large, arrow-shaped leaves that tasted like spinach, actually better than spinach, because they contained less oxalic acid and didn't turn bitter in summer heat. Vikings would harvest these leaves continuously through the growing season, using them in soups, stews, and as wraps for preserved fish. Then came the third act. In midsummer, tiny flower buds formed at the top of each stem, clustering together like miniature broccoli heads. These green clusters could be steamed or boiled, providing yet another vegetable from the same plant. One root system, 3 distinct crops, 0 replanting required. Modern nutritional analysis reveals why Good King Henry was so valued. The leaves contain more iron than spinach, along with high levels of vitamin C, calcium, and protein. For Viking families, whose diet was heavy on preserved fish and grains, these nutrients filled critical gaps. Archaeological evidence from Norse settlements shows Good King Henry seeds in storage areas, proving it was deliberately cultivated, not just foraged. The growing part requires almost no skill. Scatter seeds in spring in rich, moist soil with partial shade, and within 2 years you'll have established plants that produce for decades. The plant tolerates neglect better than most vegetables, actually seeming to thrive when you ignore it. Frost doesn't faze it. Poor soil barely slows it down. Drought? It just keeps growing. For modern homesteaders and gardeners, Good King Henry offers something grocery stores can't provide: 3 different vegetables from one permanent planting. Start harvesting shoots in the second spring, taking about half and leaving the rest to feed the roots. Once shoots mature into leafy stems, harvest outer leaves regularly. The flower buds appear in midsummer and should be picked while still tight and green. While Good King Henry provided versatile nutrition, Vikings also cultivated roots with powerful preservative properties that could protect their precious food stores through long winters. Horseradish, Armoraceae rusticana, the root that never quits. Vikings understood something crucial about food preservation. The right plants could mean the difference between surviving winter and starving. Horseradish wasn't just a condiment, it was a preservation tool, a medicine, and a flavor powerhouse that could transform bland, preserved foods into something worth eating. The thick white roots grew in every Norse farmstead, carefully tended and harvested each autumn. What made horseradish truly special was its antimicrobial power. Vikings would grate fresh horseradish and pack it around preserved meats and fish, creating a protective barrier that inhibited bacterial growth. Modern science has confirmed their intuition. Horseradish contains compounds called isothiocyanates that have powerful antibacterial and antifungal properties. These same compounds give horseradish its distinctive sinus-clearing heat. The Norse also valued horseradish as medicine. They'd make poultices from grated root to treat respiratory infections, believing it cleared congestion and fought disease. They weren't wrong. Research shows that horseradish stimulates mucus production and has natural antibiotic properties. Viking healers would mix grated horseradish with honey to create a remedy for coughs and chest infections. But the real genius of horseradish lies in its indestructibility. Plant a single root cutting in spring, and you've created a permanent horseradish patch that will outlive you. The plant spreads through underground roots that fragment easily, each piece capable of growing into a new plant. Some gardeners consider this aggressive, spreading a problem. Vikings considered it insurance against crop failure. Growing horseradish requires understanding its nature. Give it decent soil and adequate moisture, and it'll grow anywhere from full sun to partial shade. The plant reaches 2 to 3 feet, 61 to 91 centimeters, tall with large, coarse leaves that look almost tropical. But the real treasure hides underground, where thick white roots develop that distinctive, pungent flavor. For today's gardeners and food preservers, horseradish offers something remarkable, a condiment that's fresher and more potent than anything you can buy. Harvest roots in late fall after frost has sweetened them slightly, or in early spring before new growth begins. Dig carefully around the plant, removing larger roots while leaving smaller ones to regenerate. The preparation is simple but requires caution. Peel the roots and grate them in a well-ventilated area. The fumes are intense. Mix grated horseradish with vinegar immediately to preserve the heat and prevent browning. Vikings would pack this mixture into clay pots, sealing them with beeswax for winter storage. While horseradish provided powerful flavor and preservation, Vikings also cultivated more delicate alliums that offered continuous harvest throughout the growing season. Chives, Allium schoenoprasum, the gentle giant of alliums. In the harsh landscape of Scandinavia, chives grew wild along riverbanks and in mountain meadows, their purple pom-pom flowers dotting the landscape each summer. Vikings recognized this native plant as a gift from nature, a gentle allium that provided continuous harvest, without the intensity of garlic or the tears of onions. Archaeological excavations at Viking settlements from Iceland to Russia have found chive remains in cooking areas, proving this wasn't just foraged food, but deliberately cultivated treasure. What made chives extraordinary was their reliability. While other alliums might fail in poor soil or harsh weather, chives just kept growing. The hollow, grass-like leaves emerged in early spring, often pushing through the last snow, and continued producing until hard frost shut down the garden. Vikings could snip fresh chives almost daily throughout the growing season, adding that mild onion flavor to everything from fish dishes to fresh cheese. Modern nutritional analysis reveals why Norse families valued chives beyond just flavor. The leaves contain vitamin K, vitamin C, and folate, along with compounds called organosulfur, compounds that have antimicrobial properties. Vikings didn't understand the chemistry, but they observed that chives seemed to aid digestion and keep food fresher longer when mixed into soft cheeses and butter. The purple flowers weren't just decorative either. Vikings ate them fresh in salads or used them as garnishes for special occasions. The flowers have a milder flavor than the leaves, but still carry that distinctive allium taste. Bees loved them too, making chive patches important for honey production, another crucial Viking food source. Growing chives is almost foolproof. Plant divisions or seeds in spring in average soil, with good drainage and full sun to partial shade. The plants form dense clumps that expand each year, eventually reaching 12 to 18 inches, 30 to 46 centimeters, tall. Once established, chives tolerate drought, poor soil, and general neglect with grace that would make other herbs jealous. For modern gardeners, chives offer something special: the first fresh allium flavor of spring and the last harvest of fall. Snip leaves about 2 inches, 5 centimeters, above the soil line, and the plant responds by producing fresh growth. Regular harvesting actually keeps the plant productive and prevents it from putting all its energy into flowers. The clumps divide easily every 3 to 4 years, giving you new plants to expand your patch or share with neighbors. Vikings understood this multiplication strategy, using it to ensure every family had access to this essential herb. Divided clumps establish quickly and begin producing within weeks. While chives provided gentle, continuous flavor, Vikings also cultivated a plant they considered sacred, one that towered over gardens and offered both food and powerful medicine: Angelica. Angelica, Angelica, the sacred Norse giant. In Norse mythology, Angelica was a gift from the gods themselves, sent to protect humans from plague and evil spirits. Vikings called it kvan and treated it with reverence that went beyond simple agriculture. This towering biennial to perennial plant grew wild in northern regions, but was carefully cultivated in monastery gardens and farmsteads throughout Viking territories. Every part of the plant served a purpose, making it one of the most valuable crops in Norse culture. What made Angelica truly special was its impressive size and versatility. The plant could reach 6 to 8 feet, 1.8 to 2.4 meters, tall, with thick hollow stems, massive compound leaves, and dinner plate-sized flower heads that attracted beneficial insects from miles around. Vikings used the young stems like celery, candying them with honey for winter treats. The leaves went into soups and stews, adding a complex flavor somewhere between celery and licorice. Even the roots were harvested and dried for medicinal preparations. Modern science has validated many traditional uses of Angelica. The plant contains compounds called furanoids that have antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. It also contains essential oils that aid digestion and reduce gas, explaining why Vikings would chew Angelica seeds after heavy meals. Research has shown that Angelica extracts can help with respiratory issues, which aligns with Viking use of the plant for treating coughs and chest congestion. The Norse relationship with Angelica went beyond practical use. They believed the plant bloomed on the feast day of the Archangel Michael, hence its Latin name. Bundles of Angelica were hung in homes to ward off disease during plague years. Warriors would carry dried Angelica root as protection against harm. Whether these practices worked through chemistry or belief, Angelica held a special place in Viking culture. Growing Angelica requires patience and understanding of its life cycle. The plant is technically biennial, dying after flowering in its second year. However, if you prevent flowering by cutting back flower stalks, Angelica can persist for several years as a perennial. Plant seeds in fall or early spring in rich, moist soil with partial shade. The seeds need cold stratification to germinate, so fall planting often works best. For modern gardeners and herbalists, Angelica offers something remarkable, a dramatic architectural plant that's also completely edible and medicinal. Harvest young stems in spring when they're tender, before they become too fibrous. The leaves can be picked throughout the growing season for cooking. Roots are best dug in fall of the first year or early spring of the second year, when their medicinal compounds are most concentrated. The candied stems are a traditional Scandinavian treat worth reviving. Cut young stems into 4-inch, 10-centimeter pieces, blanch them briefly, then simmer in honey or sugar syrup until translucent. These candied stems keep for months and provide a unique flavor that's both sweet and herbal. While Angelica reached toward the sky, Vikings also valued plants that hugged the ground, including one that provided both medicine and a surprisingly tart addition to their diet: rhubarb, Rum rhubarborum, the Siberian survivor. Rhubarb arrived in Scandinavia via the ancient trade routes that connected Vikings to the Far East, and they immediately recognized its value. This wasn't the dessert plant we know today. Vikings valued rhubarb primarily as medicine, with the tart stalks serving as a bonus food source during the lean spring months. The massive leaves and thick red stalks became fixtures in Norse gardens, particularly in Iceland and Greenland, where few other plants could survive the harsh conditions. What made rhubarb extraordinary was its timing and toughness. The plant emerged from frozen ground in early spring, often pushing up through snow to produce those first tart stalks when winter food stores were running dangerously low. For Viking families who had survived on preserved fish, dried meat, and stored grains for months, fresh rhubarb was like a miracle, proof that winter was finally ending. Modern nutritional analysis shows why rhubarb was so valued beyond just its availability. The stalks contain vitamin K, vitamin C, calcium, and potassium. They're also high in fiber and contain compounds called anthraquinones that have laxative properties, explaining why Vikings used rhubarb root as a digestive medicine. The tart flavor comes from malic acid and oxalic acid, the same compounds that give the plant its distinctive pucker. But here's the critical Viking knowledge. Never eat the leaves. They contain dangerously high levels of oxalic acid and other compounds that can cause serious illness. Vikings understood this instinctively, always discarding the leaves and using only the stalks. The leaves did serve a purpose, though. They were composted or used as mulch, returning nutrients to the soil. Growing rhubarb is almost embarrassingly simple. Plant crowns in early spring or fall in rich, well-drained soil with full sun to partial shade. Dig in plenty of compost or aged manure. Rhubarb is a heavy feeder that rewards good soil with massive production. Space plants 3 to 4 feet, 91 to 122 centimeters apart, as they'll spread into impressive clumps over time. For modern gardeners, rhubarb offers something remarkable, a productive perennial that can outlive you. Established plants produce for 20 to 30 years or more, getting bigger and more productive with age. The first year after planting, resist the urge to harvest. Let the plant establish strong roots. In the second year, take a few stalks. By the third year, you can harvest heavily from spring through early summer. Harvest by grasping stalks near the base and twisting while pulling. Clean cuts with a knife can invite rot into the crown. Take about half the stalks each time, leaving the rest to feed the plant's roots for next year's growth. Stop harvesting by midsummer to allow the plant to store energy for winter. Vikings would chop rhubarb stalks and simmer them with honey to make a tart sauce that cut through rich, fatty foods. They'd also dry thin slices for winter use, rehydrating them in soups and stews. The root was carefully harvested, dried, and stored as medicine, though modern gardeners should leave roots intact to keep plants producing. While rhubarb provided reliable spring harvests, Vikings also cultivated one more perennial that spread through their gardens like a sweet, edible carpet. Wild strawberry, Fragaria vesca, the forest floor treasure. In the forests and meadows of Scandinavia, wild strawberries carpeted the ground each summer with tiny white flowers, followed by intensely flavored red berries. Vikings didn't just forage these treasures, they transplanted them into their gardens, creating permanent patches that produced fruit year after year. These weren't the large, watery berries we buy in supermarkets today. Wild strawberries were small, intensely sweet, and packed with flavor that made cultivated varieties taste like water by comparison. What made wild strawberries special was their incredible productivity relative to their size. A single plant might produce only a handful of berries, but those plants spread through runners, creating ever-expanding mats that could cover entire garden beds. Vikings would harvest berries continuously through summer, eating them fresh, drying them for winter, or preserving them in honey. Children were often given the task of strawberry picking, a job that kept them fed while they worked. Modern nutritional analysis reveals why Vikings valued these tiny berries so highly. Wild strawberries contain more vitamin C per weight than oranges, along with powerful antioxidants, called anthocyanins, that give the berries their red color. They also contain ellagic acid, a compound that modern research links to cancer prevention and anti-inflammatory effects. Vikings didn't understand the chemistry, but they recognized that families who ate wild strawberries regularly seemed healthier. The Norse also used wild strawberries medicinally. The leaves were brewed into tea for digestive issues and to reduce fever. Fresh berries were crushed and applied to skin irritations and minor burns. Whether these treatments worked through active compounds or simply provided comfort, wild strawberries held an important place in Viking healing practices. Growing wild strawberries is refreshingly simple. Plant divisions or runners in spring or fall in average soil with partial shade to full sun. The plants tolerate a wide range of conditions, but produce best with consistent moisture and rich soil. Unlike cultivated strawberries that need replacing every few years, wild strawberries are truly perennial, producing indefinitely once established. For modern gardeners, wild strawberries offer something special: intensely flavored fruit from a plant that doubles as attractive ground cover. The plants stay low, rarely exceeding 6 inches, 15 centimeters tall, with glossy three-part leaves that look attractive even when not fruiting. White flowers appear in spring, followed by berries that ripen continuously through summer. The spreading habit that some gardeners consider aggressive was exactly what Vikings wanted. Each plant sends out runners that root wherever they touch soil, creating new plants that expand the patch. Within a few years, a handful of starter plants can cover several square feet, producing hundreds of tiny berries. Harvest by picking berries when they're fully red and come off easily with a gentle tug. The flavor is most intense when berries are warm from the sun. Vikings would eat them fresh while working in the garden, dry them on wooden racks for winter storage, or preserve them in honey for special occasions. The leaves can be harvested throughout the growing season for tea. Pick young, healthy leaves and dry them in a shaded, well-ventilated area. Vikings would brew this tea year-round, believing it promoted health and vitality. These 10 Viking perennial crops represent more than just historical curiosities. They're proven food sources that sustained Norse civilization through some of history's harshest conditions: brutal winters, short growing seasons, and unpredictable weather that would devastate modern annual gardens. What's remarkable is how accessible these plants remain today. No rare materials, no complex techniques, no global supply chains required. Viking farmers understood something we've forgotten in our obsession with annual vegetables. The best crops are the ones that don't need constant replanting. These perennials offer reliability that annual gardens can't match. Plant them once, and they'll feed you for decades, getting more productive with each passing year. Start with 1 or 2 crops that appeal to you most. Many of these hardy survivors are available from specialty nurseries, or can be foraged from wild areas with proper identification. Before long, you'll have a permanent food garden that produces year after year, connecting you directly to the agricultural wisdom of your Norse ancestors. And if you had a good time raiding the past with us today, do us a favor and pillage that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating and often surprising world of Midgard living.